She looked at herself in the mirror. She'd always wanted to have a family. Someday. The truth was, this little bun in the oven didn't feel real to her. Probably wouldn't until she saw how Jack reacted. And honestly, she had no idea what his reaction would be. Paisley was sort of afraid, and she hadn't allowed herself to be afraid in a really long time. She was good at finding the bright side of things, but this was bigger than her. She wanted to text Olive and Delaney because she needed her best friends by her side at a time like this. But it was Jack's baby, and she sort of thought he should be the first one she told. Plus, they had this date tonight. She hoped. She took a deep breath. In her head, she was picturing his reaction, and it was, of course, something over the top in the best possible way. But so many times, life didn't deliver on her expectations. "Stop!" she told herself. Sometimes her mind kept going on, and nothing she could say would put a kibosh on it. She put on her red velvet cloak because it was December in Chicago, but she also liked to look festive during the holiday season. Then, taking a bolstering breath, she walked out of her building and saw that Delaney's Rolls-Royce was waiting at the curb. "Good evening, Miss Campbell. I'm at your service tonight," her friend's driver Lyle said as he stepped out of the car. "Do you know where we are going?" "Yes, ma'am. All you have to do is sit and relax," he assured her. Lyle opened the back door to the Rolls, and she saw a gaily wrapped present on the seat and an envelope with her name on it. As soon as she was settled in and had her seatbelt on, she opened the envelope. There was some really nice thick paper folded in half and a note from Jack. She'd recognize his heavy, scrawly handwriting anywhere. "Paisley, tonight I want you to forget about the real world and let me sweep you away. It's my way of saying thank you for the last 6 months. Jack." Her heart leaped to her throat. Did that mean he wanted to go beyond 6 months? Or was he saying goodbye in the nicest way possible? Paisley stepped out of the silver Rolls-Royce, and Sean caught his breath as he always did when he saw her. She had pretty blue-gray eyes in a heart-shaped face with the thick fall of brown bangs on her forehead, and always looked beautiful. But tonight, she was positively radiant. Her dress was a true showstopper. It had a high, elegant neckline and slightly puffed black lace sleeves that had been embroidered with stars and a swirling moon similar to Van Gogh's famous painting, The Starry Night. The dress itself was a fit and flare type that hugged her arms and breasts and showed off her slim waist before falling in a cascade of what looked like velvet from this distance. The designer had continued the stars and moon embroidery on the skirt, and it ended at her ankles. He saw the pointed toes of her cream-colored leather stiletto-heeled boots peeking out from under the hem. And she held a vintage Chanel quilted chain bag in her hands. Yet, despite her poise and grace, the way she was standing there staring at him, she looked almost nervous. Like maybe, despite the skull cap he had on, she could tell he'd changed his hair back to its normal color. Maybe she'd figured out who he was. Or maybe not. Regardless, tonight he was going to come clean about his real identity. But he didn't want to do it in her apartment, which he'd been sharing with her for the last 6 months. He wanted the reveal of his true self to show all the parts he'd been hiding. To that end, he'd pulled out all the stops. He had booked out the entire restaurant, dyed his hair back to its natural dark brown, and shaved off the beard he'd been sporting since they'd first met. And as for his attire, he'd donned his signature designer Hugo Boss suit. He had an ad campaign with them that had launched over the Thanksgiving weekend, and ironically, he'd spotted the billboard on his way here tonight. She smiled at him, and he smiled right back at her as his eyes once again drank in the gorgeous woman standing before him. She had the fur muff that he'd given to her as a gift in her hands, and the long red velvet opera cloak that she loved to wear.